Oh, it's Friday with Jarod on Bring It In, True Hoop Zoom from Quarantine Show. Jarod Hector, David Thorpe. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Stressed.
David's got a lot going on. There's actually a whodunit going on in his neighborhood. Somebody's messing with the internet, and there's a whole mystery, and it's unfolding, and it's going to tear at the seams of his delightful Florida neighborhood for decades. So that's why he's stressed. Maybe other reasons too. Jarod, there's a Jarod show. Let's watch the Jarod show. Here we go.
Okay.
NBA players shoot more threes than ever. Some worry too many. So many the game is getting too predictable. Does the NBA have a three-point problem? A recent article said people within the NBA believe the game is at a critical mass when it comes to the volume of threes. There's something we can do. There's a way to make it harder on the offense to shoot threes. Allow the biggest players on the court to protect the most valuable space, aka eliminate the defensive 3-second rule. Right now, players on the perimeter have to worry about defending everything, including drives to the rim. Imagine ginormous, rangy 7-footers like Rudy Gobert, Miles Turner, and Joel Embiid free to roam the paint and make even the most fearless rim attackers think twice. That would supercharge the 4 defenders on the court, right? If you know the big guys back there protecting against the drive, that's one less thing to worry about when you're playing defense. Then we'll get to see what perimeter defenders can really do. They'll make threes a little tougher and a little less valuable. We'll get to see how the NBA's genius players adjust. My guess, it'll be incredible.
Yeah.
I like the dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, you get the super HD close-up of my eyeballs.
Was that you? Was that your idea?
Oh yeah. So when I work with my production guy, I'm literally EPing, okay, it'd be cool here if we do this sound effect and zoom in like this, because it's a video product, right? So we want it to look fun and kitschy and
A+. I love it.
Thank you.
Okay. We will probably talk about that more later.
Yeah.
9 by 90 time, Jarod.
It is. So you guys know I've been talking about the Biden administration and the stimulus plan that passed. Super popular. It was wonderful. But something else is going on right now, and let's talk about the filibuster. You guys may know what the filibuster is. Essentially, it is a tool used by the Senate to not work. Right? That's all it is. It's how they delay doing actual work. So if there's an important
homeowners, this incredible tip.
Something crazy is happening.
If there's an important bill coming up or something, and they don't want to vote on it, they just say, I'm going to filibuster. And it used to be in the past, you had to actually step up on the Senate floor and talk. Now you just basically say, I'm going to filibuster, and the vote does not go to pass, which is fucking insane. Why does this matter? Because the stimulus bill passed through something called budget reconciliation. If Biden wants to do what he wants to do as an administration, everything that he wants to pass cannot get done through budget reconciliation. Newsflash, the $15 minimum wage hike, notice why it didn't happen? Because that wouldn't get through budget reconciliation. You have to have the ability to get things passed within Senate without this dreaded supermajority, right? And all that is a Senate supermajority and the filibuster are ways in which Mitch McConnell and the minority Republicans rule, right? That's how you keep minority rule in charge. And so we need to really hope the Democrats stick to their guns and, grow, what, and say no. Filibuster out.
Did you see what Elizabeth Warren said about it?
I did.
Yeah.
I didn't, but I want to hear. So tell me later. Mark it down, Henry. So this crazy, amazing, brilliant woman, 18-year-old South Korean girl named Yoon So Choi, I think her name is Yoon So Choi, won $250,000 for taking what I think is a standard theory called matching theory, which is used for doing things like helping doctors find the best residency and that kind of thing. And it's an important theory. And she exploded it and made it into a workable economic theory that can apply to things like helping people find their life partner and other very important things. But the more important thing is how she exploded it. She made the algorithms help it become a much more infinite number of people that can be, or people or places, locations that can be part of this process. It's the human brain is so typically prone towards limiting everything. There's a famous thing about guessing how thick a piece of paper can be if you fold it over itself 50 times, and humans never get anywhere close to guessing how really wide it would be. Malcolm Gladwell wrote about it. This brilliant young lady, while going to high school in South Korea, virtually to her famous prep school, and she's going to Harvard next year to study math, she was able to expand that theory to something much, much bigger. And she got first place in this incredible Regeneron Award. And it's just a reminder, brilliance is everywhere. It's not just white men that have it. And we need to be attending to all these incredibly amazing people. Oh, by the way, it applies to the NBA. We'll talk about that later.
That was like, I know he's going to connect to the NBA because it's in the doc. Okay. Baxter Holmes shared the story about how the NBA is going to be opening up for players who've had the vaccine. This is basically the incentive program to get players to get vaccinated is, you can go to restaurants, you don't have to get tested every day, etc. You can see the little infographic there if you're watching on video. That's an interesting set of incentives. Ultimately, it's good news. There's some reports that there have been quite a few number of people. Here you go. Report from Atlanta that teams that have fully vaccinated, 85% of players and staff will have COVID-19 restrictions eased. In this case, the Hawks, 36 members of the Hawks basketball ops staff have received their first dose. So this is, this is how pandemics end. We have a story coming out from Tom Haberstroh later today, which basically would add, there's one other reason, which is if you look now, Fred VanVleet talked on Tuesday about how incredibly sick he was. And what we're going to show in the story is that there's a performance and health hangover for some players from being sick from COVID, which lasts inexplicably and for an unknown duration and has an effect. And it's happening to NBA players, including stars, right now in the NBA. So it's not just that you don't want to get sick, it's that for some players, we don't know when you're going to get back to 100%.
Jason Tatum still experiencing symptoms. So our friend Sirit Sohi wrote an article recently for Yahoo about Luka Doncic and, the magic that is, Luka magic and what he does on the court and the idea of shots that he takes are terrible. And then, they become great because he works at them. And it had me thinking about guys like Luka, James Harden, and even Kyrie to an extent, these players who, when I watched them and coach always talks about basketball as jazz and he uses art metaphors, these guys, are extreme artists, right? And their ability to do things. And that famous saying, right, is a fine line between genius and insanity, or you may say genius and chaos, right? And maybe in the working of all of their fantastic things that we see that eventually work, you have to have this messy part where it looks kind of crazy and you're like, what the hell are they doing? This looks terrible. And Sirit wrote about that at the end of her piece, talking about some of Doncic's shots. There are moments where the ease that allows Doncic to make magic tricks him into thinking that basketball is actually easy. It's akin to typing instead of writing, flailing instead of dancing. Doncic makes you wonder if you can have one without the other. He makes you wonder if self-deprecation is a source of all creativity. He makes you wonder. And I thought Sirit really outlined that so well. When you're thinking about these elite, creative basketball players, like the guys I mentioned, that's what it is. They make things that seemingly are impossible possible.
Oh, we definitely want to talk about that more.
Wow, yeah, that's a good article too. Oh, yesterday I think it really hit. Henry mentioned that I think someone in Stanford talked about the difference between the women's weight room at their NCAA tournament bubble and the men's weight room, and the difference between a Ritz-Carlton and a Motel 6. And then Sedona.
I got some.
Here we go. Go ahead, Judy.
To show y'all. So for the NCAA March Madness, the biggest tournament in college basketball for women, this is our weight room. Let me show y'all the men's weight room.
She's showing a very large,
big
stacked room.
Now, when pictures of our weight room got released versus the men's, the NCAA came out with a statement saying that it wasn't money, it was space that was a problem. Let me show y'all something else. Here's our practice court, right? And then here's that weight room. And then here's all this extra space. If you aren't upset about this problem, then you're a part of it. I got some.
So the great news is a lot of people jumped in. John Morant, Steph Curry, our friend Amin Elhassan had a great one, which is, let's just start with decency. My friend Charlton Young, who's a coach at Florida State, who has a daughter playing in this tournament, noticed also, I guess there's been talk about the difference in what they call swag bags. And I know what they look like because my son got one. He showed us a picture of what he got. It isn't like the Academy Awards, but compared to the women, it is. And what the women got. And so the one thing I'll say in 3 seconds is these are college athletes. Why in the world can we not invest in women the way we invested in men for 80 years of college sports? We'll talk about this after.
That exciting problem you just talked about, David, a lot of the solution that I see proposed is basically to present women's sports in the media precisely the same way that men's sports are presented in the media. I propose that that's a fucking tragic idea, because the way men's sports are presented in the media, I can tell you from decades of data, fails for men's sports. Like, jump in line, get ahead to the next thing. Women have an opportunity to not be as stupid as men were here. This is why I got really excited about Rada Black, who made that movie, the 40-year-old version. She felt out of the spotlight for a decade, and then told a story that was super raw and connected in a way that someone who was having a big income with endorsements and sponsors and clients wouldn't have told that story. And that was her entree, this extra level of honesty. Like, I see LeBron is getting into the movie game, not into the beat writer game, right? Like, this is where you want to go. I think if you want to, like this video that David just showed, right? This is a kind of raw honesty that if you work for the NBA, in the NBA, you just don't complain about your bosses like that because they pay you so well. Right. So the better media comes from being more honest and more open. I think that's the avenue to big audiences in media for men or women. I think their women might have an advantage.
So the Sixers played the Bucks the other night in a really interesting game. They ended up losing, but there was something that really stood out to me in the game, and that was Ben Simmons' defense against Giannis. Giannis, of course, we know, two-time MVP, DPOI, all that. There was a game, I think it was in 2019, where or 2020, Giannis scored a ton against the Sixers. And, in sort of classic fashion, when you're in the middle of a basketball game, he's running down court, yelling, "He's a expletive baby. He's a baby," right? Like, and that was aimed at Simmons, basically saying that Simmons can't guard me. Well, in this particular game, Simmons did a pretty good job of guarding Giannis, right? You're never going to stop those kinds of players, but the fully realized version of a 6'10", uber athletic, uber strong defender on Giannis was realized in a large part of that game. When Giannis was doing his drives, Simmons was cutting him off his passing angles. He was throwing the ball around to nowhere and no one in particular. And if the Sixers are able to defend the Bucks with Ben straight up as opposed to Joel Embiid, woo boy, that's great, because then that's that big 7-footer roaming around like we talked about, and that's good stuff for the Sixers. So just something to keep an eye on.
Artfully done, Judy, by the way, because I froze out. She got me back in.
Oh, nice. Clutch.
So we got March Madness officially started last night. The actual tournament of the top 64 will begin today. And as a teenager, I saw these two things, I think on the same day, actually. And I did my first bracket. This was, 1981. I was 15 years old. Go ahead, Judy. They switched to this live.
A one-point ball game going on in Austin, Texas, so let us go back to Marv Albert and Bucky Waters.
Thank you, Brian. Time running down. Arkansas having trouble getting out. US3 with the swing. It's in! It's in! US3! Let's see. Will they say it counts? It's all over.
That was US Reed hitting a half-court shot.
US Reed hitting from half court.
And I have picked Arkansas. So do the other one now, Judy.
That's a party. They are having a party right there.
I had a poster of this other one on my wall in college. Not a poster, the cover of Sports Illustrated. It was Rolando Blackman. Can you play it, Judy? The second one. This is Kansas State. And my memory says it's the same day. And I fell in love forever.
Blackman
Okay, that's good, Jude. He had a Oregon State was a very good team as well. Blackman hit a last second jumper literally as the game ended. And my life changed forever. I was addicted in a way that Norm Nixon and Magic Johnson and Larry Bird hadn't yet addicted me. This was the nail in my coffin for loving basketball forever. It starts today, people.
That Rolando Blackman moment is part of why, like, my whole life as someone who grew up in Oregon, when it was tournament time, we played bracket, I would just bet against every Pac-10 team every time. All right. So this story David published yesterday, I thought it was amazing. Basically, there aren't superstars available to help your team win a title midseason, but there are very tough players. And as one example he used was Alex Caruso, who played absolutely crucial defense in the finals last year, super dogged, and was undrafted in 2016. So 60 players were selected when he wasn't. And now David points out 41 of those 60 aren't even in the league anymore. And here's this guy. It's a metaphor. It's a guide. There are players with his kind of skill set if you're shopping for them around. And when David has this little line he's been using for years, which is, I know you're here to recruit talent, but you're going to lose to toughness in the end, right? Amazing point. Cool little thing was that stuff I just said. I tweeted it yesterday, and Alex Caruso liked it, which is cool because I think he can't exactly brag about it because those players who did get selected are his teammates, right? Like, he can't exactly be a jerk about it, but he noticed what you did there, David, and that gave me a little 5 minutes of smiling this morning.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I didn't know that until you did it, but he was crucial. Yeah, and of those 41, of those 41 that aren't in the league.
That's for you, Jarod.
Yeah. Of those 41 that aren't in the league, a lot of them never even had a chance. Like, they never even came to the league.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing. I think going back to Miss Choi and what she's done is the league is just, we keep looking for needles, just the few little pieces. And instead of looking at the infinite number of players that can actually help your team win, if you looked at it that way, I think she could help a lot of executive. Daryl Morey should have her on the phone. Daryl probably should offer her a job. Like someone like that who understands how to expand that net that you're casting for talent would be very helpful, because they keep looking for these tiny little things, and it's a huge mistake, I think.
Well, and there's I feel like almost every draft pick. So like Michael Jordan was dominating the league, and then Harold Miner gets drafted really high, right? The idea is that like there's something like Michael Jordan, but there isn't. There's Michael Jordan. One of one, as Jarod says, right? Like there's not 1.1 of one. Like there's not, like Harold Miner's not a thing. And actually, weirdly, like I think scoring went down. Everyone tried to get high scoring shooting guards who were super athletic, and scoring actually went way down because a lot of those athletes can't score like Michael, but they can defend, right? So suddenly you have all these Kendall Gills or whatever, which was like, you know, the league in a way was trying to get super creative, high flying scoring, and just got like, you know, ended up getting the Knicks, the very bruising defense. Anyway, Jarod, you're doing lots of good nodding.
Well, it's the challenge of building a team, right? Like, which is not as easy as, you know, people at home like to think that it is, right? Okay. First, everyone knows you need one of those, or sometimes multiple of those guys, right? Just because you're not winning ultimately unless you have that, right? Okay. Sure. But those guys don't grow on trees. There's only so many of them, right? Now, when they are gone in a draft, or when you've identified there are no others, your team ain't just going to be all those kinds of guys. It has to be Alex Caruso's, PJ Tucker's, has to be all these other kinds of guys as well, who when you couple them with those guys, it becomes this Voltron, right? This multiplier that you're like, oh, this team is supercharged now. Now we can't beat them because they got everything. They got the dude who's going to box out and do all this shit. They got because you need all those things. But it's like everybody wants to get the big shiny thing. And it's like, yeah, I get that. But you got to get the other stuff with the big shiny thing. Either by themselves, you're not winning with only one. You need it all together. And that's the challenge that GMs have, right? How do I connect and get all of these things?
Well, I want to add one more thing.
Yeah.
To make it and bring it to right now. In the article, what got me to write the article, Henry, because I was going to write about Miami.
Yeah.
And I I just started thinking, I have no idea why, about Paul Pierce's jump ball play against LeBron.
Oh, it's the best. That whole play is amazing. Yeah.
When he made that play, he jumped to a Hall of Famer level in my book. I'm not saying he wasn't a Hall of Famer before. I didn't love his game as much as I loved it after that play. That also took experience and grit. Like a lot of superstars don't make that play. LeBron didn't make that play.
Well, let's describe the play. Tell us the story.
So basically, the Cavs were down 3 in Boston for Game 7, Eastern Conference semifinals, 2008.
1 minute.
But Cleveland I watched the game live. I was working at ESPN. Cleveland, if Cleveland went the jump ball and Big Z, 7'3", was jumping against 6'7" James Posey. So the Cavs are going to win the tap in terms of who is going to get the tip and control to where it's going to go. The question was, what's going to happen on the ground, right? So Pierce is next to LeBron, and LeBron is, and I've watched this play literally 100 times over the years, is waiting for the ball. And Paul Pierce, the rules in the NBA, and I verified this with an NBA referee, Henry, when I wrote it to make sure I was right. But it's what I thought it was. So everyone gets around a circle for a jump ball. You can move if you're outside the circle before the player's tip, but you can't encroach the circle. So Paul Pierce, like, fuck that. I'm not letting LeBron get the ball. So the millisecond the referee put the ball in the air, here came Paul jumping in front of LeBron inside the circle. At worst, it would have been a violation. Cavs side out of bounds, and the Solar's the best defense in the league, and we can set our defense. You don't want to scramble a situation with 8 seconds left in the game on a jump ball, right? Whatever, not 8 seconds, a minute to go. So he jumps in front, tips it away, and then it's a loose ball. Anyone could have chosen to dive. LeBron ran, Pierce dove, grabbed it, timeout. Right? Pretty much at this point, it was down a 1-possession game because they just ran 20 seconds off the clock and it was their ball. That was such a tough play and a winning play. And the greatest part about this, and I'm going to bring it to LaMelo and Weissman and Edwards, who are 3 real potential superstars as we're watching right now. When they honored Paul Pierce when he retired, both Danny Ainge and Doc Rivers, who coached him at the time, said that's the play they most remember him for. And it meant so much to him because that's a winning play. And I don't think players necessarily, and this is why LaMelo and Edwards and Weissman cannot be judged good or bad now. They're young. Let them figure stuff out. It's unfair to judge them otherwise, especially if you're not as talented as them, then you better be doing the Paul Pierce thing right now. Alex Caruso's doing it right now and has always done it. Those guys are at another level. They're allowed to grow that part of their game. If they don't, they won't be in those moments and make those plays. But they need to make those plays. Paul Pierce was not embarrassed that it wasn't a dunk or a 3 or a 40-point game. He loved the fact that they remember me for making that play to win the game in a semifinal conference, a tournament event. So I just love that he did that, and that our best stars now, including Luka dives. I've written about this before. Luka isn't reaching for the ball. He's diving to win, right? That's what our young guys have to grow next, is that fierceness and urgency. I've got to win this possession to win the game. You can't just do it once in a while because the other team is targeting you all the time when you get to that high level. You better have that urgency in your game or you're in trouble.
I have a little theory about this, which is like the moments to do starring things, to jump over everybody or whatever, just aren't that common. Whereas the opportunities to be a little more ferocious, a little tougher are every second, right? Like think about your examples here. It's a jump ball with a minute left. It's early 4th quarter. Alex Caruso checks in to guard Tyler Hero. Like basketball just has so many moments. Like Paul Pierce used extraordinary tenacity to turn what could have been 7-3 to June Galgaskas, taps the ball to 6'9" LeBron James. It's routine. But Paul was like, we are going to make it unroutine, right? Like if you have this willingness to do these things, then I think the opportunity to those is just very common, which is why Kyle Lowry is a lifelong champion of plus minus stats.
Right.
And and why Gerald Green, who's fantastic in his youth at flying over everybody, isn't.
Giannis has some story too. Go ahead, Jarod.
Yeah. I think so much of it too is like, when they're younger and we're coaching, we're bringing kids up, like not you, coach, but like what is valued and what gets you into the league. right? Like Alex Caruso and TJ McConnell and people like that are in the league for a specific reason, right? Like the way they hustle and grind is why they are there, right? Like Paul Pierce is in the NBA because you hit an 18-foot step back, like at a whatever percent clip, right? It's like, what are the things that I'm known for that got me to this point, right? And then it's like, okay, but now when it's those moments and you got to value possessions, what actually impacts winning the game? It may not be an 18-footer. In this case, you got to, in Paul's case, dive on the damn floor and get that ball because we can't waste this possession right here, right? So I think that's part of it too.
So David, you said something in passing in that story that I was like, ooh, I kind of want to talk about this. So everybody passed on Alex Caruso. Everybody passed on Luguentz Dort, right? Like,
lug nuts.
Lug nuts. Sorry, I said his name incorrectly. Then you mentioned like probably at last year's trade deadline, nobody offered a lottery pick for Dort. Oh no, David's gone.
He was frozen all the time.
And he's back. He's back. Okay, so it's inarguable that Dort contributed as much as a good lottery pick might have in last year's playoffs. But like, David, would you give a lottery pick for Luguentz Dort? Lugnuts Dort.
First of all, it's amazing that you guys mentioned Dort because that's what I was going to do before I was kicked out of the internet world. Because I wanted to make sure people understand there's no white-black issue on this. Not everyone can be Paul Pierce and Luka Doncic. These guys are extraordinary. Just exactly what Jarod said earlier. They are a different level. And I understand why everyone wants one of those guys, but there's just so few of them. The player that doesn't quite have all of that, those are easy to draft. The hard guys are, and so to your point, hell yeah, I would use a lottery pick. It just depends on who else I have to choose from. But if you're telling me in some of these terrible drafts we've had, I have to take Dort at number 5 and I get my starting 2 guard for the next X number of years, I don't got to pay him max deal because he's not going to be that kind of player. Yeah. I just tell me who I'm drafting against. That's all. Right. But as it turns out in the next 5 years, where is he going to rank in his draft class? Let's look it up. Is it top 14? Possibly. Right. Better be a hell of a draft class if he isn't top 14. Right. In some years, he will be top 14.
Henry, it's something that you bring up all the time, though, right? About, well, picking Lou Dort at 5, get your GM, get you fired as a GM. Right? Like, I think that's why they don't do it. They're like, oh no, I'm going to get fired if I do this. But to David's point, it doesn't matter if the rest of the draft ain't good and all the Luka types are gone. I mean, Luka types, there's only one of him, but
there's not a type
in the draft. Well, I got to get somebody else. This Lou Dort guy could be very good for me, but it's perception, right? If he's drafted at 5, it is now, what do you think a number 5 draft pick should be, right? And then it becomes this whole thing. Well, if you're picked 5th, you should be this, 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 and this. And it's like, well, not really. Look at it versus the draft that it's in, right? Like, and I think it's hard for GMs to do that.
I understand why they don't do that. I'm not insensitive to it, but are you a fucking leader or not? Like, you know how to fucking win or not? Like, if you know what you're doing, fucking do it, right? Like, if Lou Dort's going to win you games, get Lou Dort. Like, duh, that's the whole job. There's nothing else to do. That's all you do. Like, just do it. Like,
my favorite draft line that's always running in my head, and I'm not a GM, so maybe I'm stupid, but all I ever think is trade down. Like, the superstars are gone. That doesn't mean you can't draft another superstar later. You're going to have to develop them. But there might be 10 of those guys. And none of them are, I mean, Giannis went 15, so did Kawhi. Okay? Siakam went 27. All right? I can go on and on and on. I can go all day. Drew Holiday went 16. All right? You can trade down and get those guys. You could have gotten, and develop them and add more picks later on and trade down again and add more picks and keep grabbing all these guys. And then, of course, all about player development, as we know.
Yeah, Henry, you're right. These GMs, they say they're like leaders and all that, but they got owners who don't want to lose press conferences and get made fun of by their other owner friends, and and this causes stupid decisions, and they do dumb things.
Amen. Okay, Jarod, you talked about having the creativity to do new things on the court, and Sirit's article, and alarm bells started going off in my head because we had sort of an event in our family on this exact topic the other night, which is we're watching the DVR version of the Blazers beating the Pelicans, And after the game on TNT, Candace Parker asked Damian Lillard about like his fearlessness in taking crazy shots. And he just had, I mean, watch it. If I'd known this was going to come up, I would have queued it up. But like, he gave just the most incredible talk about you do all the work when nobody's looking so that you have the insane confidence, so that when the moment comes, you know you deserve to take that shot. It's not a hoper, right? Like, and then he talks about like, he starts talking about, you know, trust and his family and loving these people more. And like, it becomes like really so legitimately inspiring that what actually happened at our house, and I'll try to do it without names, is that my daughter was looking at her iPad and announced that she'd gotten into a very good university, and somebody in our family didn't even know she'd said it because she was so locked in on Damian Lillard. And now I'm taking the position that I think my daughter should go to that university just so we'll lock in time this moment of our family history so we can always have this, because it just delights me to no end. But worth it. I mean, I don't think like Dame's message was so good. That's totally worth it.
I love it. Well, Coach, you, and I know you can back me up on this, our favorite times as coaches is practice, right? Because that's where you're teaching and that's where all the stuff is being developed. You know, I know what's going to happen on race day. You know what's going to happen on game day to a certain extent because we've either done or not done the work, right? Like, and it's that it'll show, right? Because we've done this or we didn't do this. And so I think for Lillard's just spot on there, right? Like when you're able to, when you've done all the work, like what is there to be afraid of, right? Like I've done it. Now it's just like, all right, let's see if I can pull it off, right? And, you know, it's percentages, so it's whatever, 30, blah, blah, whatever. But you have the confidence to do it because I have done the work. That my favorite thing I look at is that Patrick Ewing meme from when he was coaching at Georgetown, when he's coaching at Georgetown a couple of years ago, and he's yelling at one of his players in the timeout. Do you work on that shot in practice? Do you work on that shot in practice? No. So why are you doing it, right? And it's if you don't work on it, how the hell are you doing it right now?
Oh, I didn't know he did that, but no, he's exactly right. I learned that from Lon Kruger. You want to practice that which you're going to be playing in a game, and then you want to be doing in a game that which you practice. And then I turned that into my defensive philosophy for years, which has been we want to force them to do stuff they don't practice. If we allow them to run the stuff they practice all the time, get the shots they practice all the time, they're likely to play much better. It doesn't mean we'll lose, but they're going to play better. The only difference is
He's so mad.
He's going to be hard to root against, by the way.
When do you work on that shot?
He's going to be hard to root against Georgetown. They're Cinderella story as much as any, maybe as Cinderella as it gets. Did you guys see, by the way, ESPN did a ranking of the top, all the coaches in this tournament and who was the best player? And there's a lot of them. I mean, Jim Boeheim was a great player at Syracuse. And I had forgotten about that. Of course, Pat Ewing is number one. You know,
but you're talking coaches.
I'm coaching. Yeah, they all played except
for
like four guys didn't play. They didn't play high school even, which I love that. I love that. In 100 years, that's gonna be even more common than ever. It's all right they didn't play, but he was such a great player. I was
my favorite, like this topic of like, what do you practice and what about you yelling about? My favorite thing about it comes from David. I feel like I'm like David's hype man, and I'm proud of that. But he has this line about you put it in your backpack. Can you tell us about? I love this line. I think about
I put it in my book. So I always talk about when we're doing skill development, we're coveting something. We're trying to learn something. Just like if you're walking by a store and you window shop, you can't wear it. You don't own it. And so when we go to games, we try to pack our suitcase that with what we own, not what we covet. Right? If we try to do what we covet, well, and if in real world, if you start wearing stuff you haven't bought, well, they put you to jail. Okay? In basketball, well, I just send you to the bench because you don't own that move. You only covet that move. We haven't owned it. We haven't mastered it. And so that's part of where coaching comes into in the NBA, where they have no practice, very little practice. So this goes back to our statement 10 years ago, Henry, about Phil Jackson letting Trevor Ariza keep missing threes. The idea is, at Oklahoma City last year, letting Lou Dort continue to miss threes because the way he was guarding Harden. And then look what happened in Game 7. He made like 7 threes or whatever. He was incredible. The difference, I'll say this in the NBA, it's much more like swimming. Jarod, in that once you get to the game, there's very little you can affect. You can run some X and O out of bounds. There's certainly, guys, adjustments happen in the NBA all the time, in game and after a game, especially in series. But yeah, most of the work is done in talent acquisition and culture building, all of that. In high school, it's a different story. And Caleb knows this well. I talk to Caleb all the time. You guys may not know that. I felt like as a high school coach, like I was just like an athlete. I am crushing that other coach. I am working my ass off all the time. And that's why I had to be a leader. I had to come up with new strategies all the time because I knew that dude was too afraid to try something different. And my job was to kick his ass. That's just how I looked at it. In the NBA, they're all, mostly anyway, great coaches. And so it's a little bit different that way. But on the executive side, I think Jarod's exactly right. I think Henry's exactly right. You've got to be brave because the difference in talent is so small. So the innovation can really make a difference. Just the out of the box thinking a little bit.
Well, that was actually another part of Lillard's inspiring talk was it's like when the stakes get higher, if you know that you can do this, then he's like, rather than getting more conservative, he's like, I try to be more fearless, right? Like,
It's awesome.
That made me think about, I mean, Allen Iverson, and now we probably joked about it in the chat today about practice, but like, I covered Allen and like, I thought that his approach to the game was very moving to me, the way he talked about it. He took it seriously. Like he may have occasionally hidden in the bathroom stall eating burritos when they were supposed to be practicing, but the man lived and breathed the game. And he would explain in all seriousness that like, he's like, he would spend the entire bus ride with his eyes closed, like picturing the game. And then he would go out there and be 5'10" and 170 or whatever the heck he was. And he would do things people hadn't imagined before. Like those things are related, right? Like, and so Larry Brown gave him enough leeway to be creative, and he was able to create some magic. Not enough players probably have been given that kind of leeway, right? And now we're seeing like, Steph, James Harden, Damian Lillard and Luka are taking bad shots. Those air quotes over bad come from a generation of coaches who we now know wrong, right? Like they were good shots if you earned the right to do them, right? And I feel like this work is how you earn the right to do them. And thank goodness it's happening. What a magical time to watch and see. And I don't pretend to know, like maybe 70 footers are in someone's wheelhouse, right? Like I'm excited just to be like, let them earn it. Let's let it grow every which way it can.
Hey, what was the reason why Larry Brown was mad at Iverson regarding practice? Do you guys remember? What was he angry about?
I don't remember exactly, but I don't think it was even about Larry Brown being mad, right? I think it was about Iverson had missed practice.
Oh,
Yeah.
Right.
Is that what it was? Okay.
Yeah,
Because
the media throng was like, Alan, you missed practice. It's like, what are we talking about here?
I was wrong for a long time. I thought Iverson was wrong, and I didn't understand how hard it is for anyone to do what he was doing if they were 6'10" and 280 pounds or 260.
Yeah.
What he was doing, it took everything. If we do have souls, I'm not sure we do, but if we do, he gave all of it. And you know what it meant? You had to miss practice sometimes. Like I get that now. I'm a much more mature, older, experienced person. I didn't get it as a coach thinking, no, you got to come to practice. Not that I really thought much about it either way. I didn't really care. I wasn't a Sixers fan. And I loved Iverson. I told you guys this story. I saw him at Lon Kruger's World University games, and Iverson was amazing. I thought he was wrong on that practice thing. He wasn't wrong. He wasn't wrong.
Part of that too, right, is sort of the media industry, right, Henry? And it's, crusty old white guys who are like, no, you gotta go to practice. And it's like how like we make sports a larger thing than it actually is, and how like if you don't go to practice, it's some like denigration on your character as a human. Like it's just all these ridiculous things that like sports writers like to do. And that was a large part of it. And I think at least hopefully now we've gotten a little better. Not much, but a little
There
better.
was so much going on with that. Like that was so Larry Brown fed it really hard too, right? Like Larry Brown was always making these comments like, I remember driving Stephon Marbury and Allen Iverson. Then he would take a little break and say, they had identical bodies back then, by the way. And then he kept going. His point being that Iverson didn't lift weights, like Like Steph was, by that point, Steph was freaking jacked. And Iverson was this skinny little dude. And, and he was frequently in nightclubs or, Allen did not fit the program. Allen was an affront to the program. Right. And I know that that's very frustrating for coaches of all kinds, especially control freak coaches like Larry Brown. Right?
Yes.
But I mean, there's no easy answer to who's right and wrong here. And I'll tell you this, like one thing that for some reason, it's stuck with me. People don't remember this, but the last several years he was in Philadelphia, he was extremely hurt. He was playing very injured. And for that one big playoff run, like the critical issue was his elbow and his range of motion, his elbow. Like he'd been out. And then there's basically the doctors were somehow, I guess coaches told us, doctors said that basically once he had a certain range of motion, he could return. The way locker room access works in Philly at that time, you could kind of see into the training room. Mm-hmm. And I happened to walk in there pregame before a playoff game, 2001, I'm pretty sure it was. And what I saw, and I didn't really realize it, didn't put together, but it was basically a bunch of people just hauling down on his wrist and forearm to freaking force his elbow straight. Like there's like humans cranking on his body to try to get it straight enough so that his injured joint would pass the test to be playable. I think that's what I saw. And, and so then this is what he's doing. This is his daily life. This is how he lives his life. And then somebody says, "Oh, we noticed you missed practice." And it's just like,
right, dude. Yeah. That ain't it. That ain't it.
I would have loved to see Iverson in this era, and not just because of the 3-point shooting in space. That's obvious. It's possible that he would be more like Westbrook, which is what he was when he played. But knowing what I know of him, it's also possible that he would have loved analytics. Very possible. Like I would argue likely that if he trusted you, he had to earn that trust. And you were able to show him why, if we just make a couple little tweaks here, you'll even be better and we'll win more. My expert guess is, he'd be down for that. And we can't get it ever, but with all the space we have in the league now, that dude, come on. And then just what we know about advanced analytics and what a better shot is. And if you start with the elbow pass and cut, I just think he would have said, "Oh man, I'm doing that." And then you could have also said, "And you won't be hurt as much because you're taking all the beatings. And I remember Derrick Rose's first ever summer league game. By the way, there weren't two of them. It was just one. He had never played pick and roll. Why would he ever play pick and roll? Nobody could guard him in high school and the 1 year in Memphis. They played dribble drive at Memphis the year he played, right? Get out of his way. Nobody can guard him. So they try to, but you can't do that in the NBA because you'll die by the time you're 24 when you're 19 years old, right? So he played one pick and roll game, one summer league game. They played pick and roll. He was terrible because he had no idea what to do. And they claimed his ankle was injured. It wasn't, he might have hurt a little bit. He was fine. But he needed practice working on that. And the Bulls were right. Because if you just let him do his thing, he would have cooked a lot of people one-on-one. But help was going to come, and he would have been worn out so much faster. That's Iverson.
Iverson now they would play him with 3-point shooters all around him.
3-point shooters.
And it would be so fun to watch.
Right. Pick and pop guys. Pick and roll Rudy Gobert.
Imagine with Gobert or with Jokic and just 3-point shooters, he'd be like, Cuisinart, there's just scoring everywhere.
And who was his best? Matt Geiger, he has a name. His dad developed a neighborhood, half a mile, not even half a mile, quarter mile south of mine. He's from here, and from the same high school my kids went.
One of the most reprehensible humans I've ever encountered. Yeah. I don't say that lightly. Yeah. Matt Geiger's just a gross man.
I once wrote a letter to Billy Cunningham about him when he was with the Heat because I was so disturbed by him. Right at the park next to my house. But that was his center. Like who was his defensive presence, guys?
Dikembe Mutombo.
Yeah, Mutombo.
Oh, that helped. Right. When he had that was good. Yeah.
Theo Ratliff before that.
Mm-hmm. That's okay too. He's okay too.
Yeah. No, they were. I feel like the defense was good. Like too, So they had, Aaron McKee and Eric Snow and Tyrone Hill.
Yeah, Tyrone Hill.
Derek Coleman.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like, oh, Todd McCullough, duh. But they, Jermaine Jones, yeah, that was Stanley Roberts. But Stanley Roberts, who I think I'm right in saying, check me on this, left the NBA because of an MDMA positive test.
You are correct.
I think the defense was great. I think Larry Brown coaches a hell of defense. Larry Brown teams did something. I check me on this. Go and watch the video. Larry Brown teams get away with slapping other teams in the wrist like every possession. I don't know. They just don't call it against Larry Brown teams, but like I watched a lot of it. I'm like, they just slap them all night. So, I don't know. Give that a try if you're a coach. The offense, Larry Brown he's out of the NBA because he never believed in threes. And so the idea was like the other team will have the most unbelievable set defense, and Allen will just throw his little tiny body into it. Like, good luck, Allen. Like, that's why his elbow hurts, right? Like, that's why he's in there getting people cranking on him. It's because the offense was dog shit. Like, Larry Brown didn't do his part, right? Like,
boo, Larry Brown.
Will you guys watch the NCAA tournament at all?
That's college basketball. Is that what that is?
I don't watch it until the tournament, except for my son. Yeah.
Well, it's funny that you brought that up, Coach. The videos to start, because it made me feel nostalgic. Like, so college, obviously, because you have much more of a freer schedule and you can basically do whatever you want. Of course, I watched a ton, but in high school, I was very involved with our cable news station. So during the NCAA tournament every year, I would skip whatever classes I could skip and just head down to our cable station in our building and just watch all the college basketball games. And I used to love the tournament so much and love college basketball so much, mainly because you knew you had there weren't really a lot of the high school jumping to the pros. You had a bunch of guys who became really good NBA pros who were at these schools for 2-3 seasons, and you're like, all right, this is fun. Then I got older and started being like, oh, NCAA, kind of a shitty organization. And the further and further I get into that, I'm like, I have zero desire to watch any of this. Yes, Caleb, I will date myself. I mean, my favorite memories, I remember Patrick Ewing in the Big East. My favorite Big East moments were when Ray Allen, Kerry Kittles, John Wallace, like all those dudes were in the Big East together. It was nuts. They were so good. Big East tournament was great. It was awesome. But, now I'm like, fuck the NCAA, so I don't watch.
When I was in college, at NYU in the early 90s, I like literally walked up to Madison Square Garden and bought a scalped ticket to the Big East tournament and saw Ray Allen. But my single, if you buy a single ticket, you end up you got a buddy. You're gonna get a stranger as your buddy. My stranger turned out to be like recently departed from the NBA, Ron Rowan, who was like a
I remember him
player in the NBA. Yeah. Where did you go to college, David? You remember?
Syracuse, maybe?
Yeah, that sounds right. I think we were watching Syracuse. I think we were watching. Where did Donya Abrams? No, Boston College.
Boston College. Yeah. What year was this?
I don't know. 2000. No, probably
Lawrence Moten. Yeah,
93, 94, something like that.
So this was probably 94. That was the year Florida played Boston College in the Final 8. Their best player was Bill Curley. 1994. Yeah, might have been that year. Yeah.
Yeah.
But Ray Allen wasn't at Connecticut then, so maybe it wasn't it. He was gone already.
But I got to watch with an NBA player who knew like everything about every player on the court, and I was like, that's when I was like, college basketball is pretty fun.
Like when the best players were there for a long time, like it was fun. Like you're like, oh, this team's really good because they got 3 NBA, 3 dudes are gonna be in the NBA. I mean, they kind of have that now, but they're so young. You never know. Right. It doesn't look quite as good.
Right. No, for sure. You're right, Jarod. They're really young. Kay Cunningham and Scotty Barnes, who were teammates in high school, I love watching those guys play, but they're 19-year-old freshmen. Right. I want to say this. John Chaney was who just passed actually, was he wrote my favorite basketball book of all time, Winning is an Attitude. It's like a Bible for me. And he gave the best post-game speech of all time. They lost in the Final 8 when he had Aaron McKee and Eddie Jones, who's from Florida, Pompano Beach, who I saw play in high school. And in his post-game press conference, I think they lost to Duke, but I could be wrong. But maybe, So he said, right now my guys are in the locker room crying their eyes out because I'm making them go pro. Jones and McKee went pro after the junior year. And he said they'll never again play with a family the way we're a family because the pros are different. He's right. And they know that. And then I remember Duke losing one year, and a guy named, I think, Lee Melchione, is an agent now, was bawling his eyes out. And when the press asked him, you know, is it hurt so much you're not playing for Duke? He said, no, I'll never again play for a teammate like JJ Redick was for me. And I've never forgotten that about JJ. And I've always believed in JJ more than I probably should have, because I thought, okay, he's not just a great shooter and a tough guy. He knows how to be a better team than anyone thought, because he was this arrogant Duke guy, whatever. But when Lee was bawling his eyes out, that meant something to me. And JJ's become an amazing teammate and a great player. That's what I think about when I watch college, though, is I know now from firsthand experience, having coached many kids that went to college, including my own son now, the heartbreak. I watched the game last night, and I can't not take my eyes off the guys who are crying, right? I know how fun, they want to keep going. It's so fun. Even though they know they're going to get creamed the next game, the 16 seeds got no shot. Norfolk State is now playing Gonzaga. If they're going to lose by 40 points. But you never know. You still got to play the game. We've seen 16 beat one once before. So to me, it's magical. For the women, too. I told my wife, I don't watch the women's NCAA tournament much because I don't have time. I did watch 4 NBA games last night. All right, so I'm busy. But I never missed the finals because I want to see that joy. I don't know who any of the players are. I don't know who the players are for the guys either. When they finally win the championship and then the pain on the other side, really, I've been doing it since I was a teenager.
Yeah, I mean, my early memories, again, like, are the championship games. And, you know, like most people, I was an anti-Duke kid growing up. So I rooted for UNLV, the Fab Five, Michigan. Anybody who was playing Duke, I'm like, F them dudes.
Hell yeah.
Like, we're rooting for everybody else. And as a kid, like, I would have the heartbreak, like when Michigan didn't win and UNLV would lose, like, oh no, like it was. So I can only imagine what they were feeling.
Jarod, you're talking about, the sort of depressing nature of what you know about the NCAA and how it robs the joy a little bit. Like the cure for that, at which we participated in as a family here in this house a week ago, is watch David's son on the bench. Like, I mean, you're short of love. Like Max Thorpe will fix that, right? Like it's, I don't know what you go through, David. Like honestly, like my kids know Max, and you can spot him. Like you will know who's Max Thorpe.
Oh,
he looks a lot like David Thorpe.
My phone doesn't stop buzzing. Yeah,
it's amazing. Honestly, like this is someone who is wresting the most possible love and joy from his NCAA basketball experience, and things aren't so broken that can happen, and it sends a powerful message to your heart. Like things are happening. Like,
I will tell you something really funny. I was talking to him on the phone last night, and I said, which arena are you playing in? They're playing the Pacers. You'll announce tomorrow. And the Pacers arena. Oh no. Mm-hmm. Did you lose me?
You're back. You're back.
Hey, because I didn't lose you guys this time. That's weird. They're playing the Pacers where the Pacers play. And I said, Max, I've watched all these other games, and everyone's sitting down, and they're spaced out. So it's not like how it's been normally where they're standing up together. He's like, well, that's not our culture. He didn't make it about him. He's like they're going to have to force my son to sit down. We used to always tell our team, and my son was a starter and a very good player in high school, like, if you're not getting a bench warning, you're in trouble. I want the referees to come warn me when I was helping, get your bench under control, because we are going to have a fucking party during the game. Practices are hard. The games are fun. Like it's competition, right? It's not war. So yeah, they're gonna have a party. They're gonna have a good time. Yeah, he loves his teammates. That's the bottom line. He loves his guys.
David, it's not out of the question that you will actually like get a clipboard and draw up like the celebration strategy, right? Like go to this area, get here, like.
Oh, I've choreographed pregame introduction stuff, and I've told the story. Sent the guy off my bench into the stands for not participating because he was mad at me for something. Like that's all part of it, right? That everyone plays a role. And I think the best programs, and I was telling my wife this today, there's a chance our son, is gonna be in a highlight for the next 40 years. Because I was watching highlights of Danny Ainge from 1981, that same tournament that I just showed. Ainge had his last, and you see the bench erupting, right? My son's a redshirt. He literally won't be playing tomorrow no matter what happens. They win by 40. He ain't playing. That doesn't mean they're not part of it. These guys are all part of the same thing. And that's the joy of this whole thing, right? You don't get it. Most industries don't have companies that do that kind of thing, right? They're starting to get better at it. Industry is starting to copy sports more. Let's bring more joy into the workplace. Maybe we'll be more productive.
I agree. More joy.
That's joy's a great thing. Joy's a great thing. Yeah, should we talk just for a second about Jarod's point about Ben Simmons defending Giannis?
Mm-hmm.
David, can you dig into the math and science of that?
Well, I mean, Jarod, tell me exactly what you're seeing, because I think you're exactly right.
So it's in previous, games in the past, it's been tough for Ben to really, sort of shut Giannis down. I mean, again, you're not shutting guys like that down, but in that game in particular, and I was impressed, it was the second out of a back-to-back for Philly. He was cutting off driving lanes for Giannis. He was forcing Giannis to pass out when Giannis normally wouldn't, and just go right to the rim, and forcing him to make bad passes, really getting into him and contesting, right? Not just doing the, let's just drop back and give him the jumper, right? Like actually getting into him. And I was like, oh, if you can do, because normally what Philly does is they have Embiid guard Giannis, and that's what he does. Wall, okay, shoot
right.
Jumpers because you ain't making them. But if they can do that and have Ben do that and have Embiid kind of free roam around a little bit, because I mean, Brook Lopez, whatever, right? Like I love that for Philly on defense.
So I watched the game. I wonder if Ben didn't get in Giannis's head a little bit, because even the announcer said not shooting the ball. It looked like he had some shots that he could take and didn't take them. And I thought, is he chasing the triple-double? Is he trying to get it? I literally thought that. Why is he passing the ball when he normally would take these, even though they're contested, he might get fouled? Ben is a nightmare. Ben looks like Giannis. Super tall, super long, super fast, super quick, amazingly quick hands. And I think Ben's starting to really buy into, hey, I'm the best. I shouldn't think this. I know this because he said it. I'm the best fucking defender on the planet. That as Henry knows, I like to say, there's a difference between knowing the path and walking the path. And right now, defensively, Ben Simmons is walking that path. He is going to walk into a Defensive Player of the Year award unless Rudy gets it, which way Jazz are playing, Rudy won't get it. Yeah. Ben's going to get it. And deservedly so.
I'm with you.
That's in his head a little bit, I think. That's his head.
I think Doc's probably got into his head behind, like, listen, you're the best fucking defender out
I
there.
agree.
And Ben, guys like Booker, you're gonna get torched because these are the most elite offensive players ever. You ain't gonna shut everybody out. But Ben walks around, and when you're watching the game and you're reading body, like we can see it. Like he believes I am the best defender out here. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, if he believes that shit, look out.
I feel like there's like a next level thing happening, right? Like you talk about walking the path, David. I think he's like eating the path. Like he's like,
he's laying the path. I mean, there's 5 of those guys that can guard anyone in the world, right? 4 of them: Kawhi, LeBron, Giannis, Ben. Who's the 5th? Right? I don't know. But, I mean, it's tough. There's not many.
Wait, David set up a construct of a quiz with 5 answers, and then there's no 5th. Like, how am I supposed to know that?
But Coach, I think the other part too, Coach, is you mentioned he's learning, right? It's every time you get out of the court, it's opportunity for your computer brain to get more data into it. I don't know what year is this, 4 or 5, whatever year it is. So it's like, oh no, I know what his moves are. I know all of these things. I know the actions. I know what's coming now.
Jimmy Butler might be there.
Yeah,
he had a tougher time with bigs.
Yeah.
You see, last thing, you see Jimmy Butler talking to RJ Barrett?
Yeah.
So Jimmy Butler stopped RJ Barrett from scoring. Ball went out of bounds, Knicks ball, and then you saw him, the camera caught him whispering to RJ, hey, you got to get in my body. I fucking love that. But it's also a little bit of an alpha male thing, like, hey, little brother. Like, even if you know what to do, I still got this.
Yeah.
But maybe down the road it'll work for you, but I like it very much. Very much.
Yeah.
No one's accusing him being soft, by the way, Jimmy Butler.
No.
And to the point of like what your son's experience of basketball is right now, David, the NBA tried to ban, post-game hugging and stuff. And like, players were like, no. Honestly, I love it. Like, I got all the right amount of COVID fears and everything. I get it. That whispering you're talking about, a little alarm bell went off, right? But at the same time, like without the fans there and with a little hard time socializing, like
they're bumping and grinding all the game. What's a hug after the game gonna do?
Right.
Yeah.
True.
Yeah. It's nice.
All right, Legals. Thank you, Judy. Thank you, Judy, for helping me today. Spectrum's coming at 1:00 for the fourth time.
I hope they're coming with the SWAT team.
Yeah, no, and a gift card.
Yeah, a gift card. All right. Thank you, Jarod. Thank you, Judy. Thank you, David. See
Be
you guys
safe,
on Monday.
everyone.